Justin Render, Senior Product Specialist here at Kinsey Manufacturing. Doing a little walk around today on Mach. Wanted to update everybody on what's changed recently. So starting up on the hitch, as you guys know, we have an articulating pivot ball style hitch as standard option. On the 302 model specifically, we're making a running change to have that standard as a Category 5. The 362s and the 412s are already a Category 5, but we've got enough feedback from our dealers and our customers that really we need to have this as a standard Category 5 hitch as well. But have no fear, if you guys need a Category 4, one is still available through parts. As we're talking a little bit more about the machine, hydraulic aspect, so you can see behind me we've got the large color-coded circuits, large grips on them to make it easy to remove and place in. We've still got our 5 circuits that we'll talk about. That 5th circuit being our hydraulic jack. As you guys can see, a large oversized plate at that bottom makes it easier when you're unhooking in the yard or putting away for storage at the season. We don't have to worry about getting 4x4s out to keep that surface up. We've got it covered with that large jack. And then as well, you can notice we made a branding change and it follows in suit with the rest of the family. We first did it on planters and then grain carts. Well, now it's time to follow it up with the Mach and get that great looking Kinsey decal as well as that color scheme to make them really stand out in the field. So we've made our way back on the machine and I want to talk a little bit about the hydraulics on this. So our first circuit is our front lift. So we've got our front lift circuits that are the number 1. We've also got our rear lifts, which are number 2, so outside and inside. Our third is these large transport cylinders here. So that's what folds the machine up or down. This one's very important. We put into float. That's what gives us the front to back contourability. Then we work our way to the wing cylinders. So as this machine's up, the wing cylinders will pull it in. As it's unfolded in the field like it is right now, on the extend side is where we utilize that weight transfer system. So what it does, as you guys know, we went to these narrower transport machines. The wings are a little bit longer. What that does is allow that to lock in, that weight transfer system to lock in and keep this machine locked and loaded in the field so weight is evenly distributed across that. So this wheel will set in constant extend. We'll turn our flow rates down to about half so it's not heating up a lot of oil, but that allows us to utilize that weight transfer as that pressure compensating reducing valve in the field. So when we get these set, I'm going to say a starting point is around that 1000 PSI. We can go up or down. Please see your books on the high side. We don't want to go too high and damage the cylinders in the field. Next, we're going to talk a little bit more about the gang sections where they're very similar between our 3-section and our 2-section machines. So as we start on the front gangs, our most common configuration is notch blades in the front, smooth blades in the rear. But this machine is very tailorable. It can be utilized with notched, smooth, or that combination of that notch smooth characteristics, depending on what you're looking for. You say, well, why have one over the other? Some guys, for example, are only running this machine in the fall and want to process residue. Just like this machine, as you see here, is a notch configuration. A lot of guys would do that. The notch smooth configuration would be kind of our overall both season design. So you can get that cutting action in the front and a little more finishing action in the back. Why a smooth? Well, it's going to give you your best finish. So guys that only run in the springtime can do that. But also we have customers that will change their configurations between spring and fall. They may have run notched in the fall time, notch smooth in the spring, or even smooth in the spring. So very tailorable to what you're trying to achieve. As we start looking into the components, so we've got our blades down here. Most blades are going to be that 5,000 plus acres wear life on it. It's going to depend on how abrasive your soils are, but we've ran them out in sheer desert, sand, rock conditions and got well more than 1,000 acres. I've heard all the way up to 15,000 acres in some of the black chocolate cake type soils, but it's going to vary depending on how much abrasive soils you have, but I would count on no less than 5,000 acres. As we work our way up to the bearing, it's a sealed dual bearing. We keep all the contamination out of it, so they're a long life bearing. You're typically going to reblade the machine at least one time before bearings start failing. Around that 20,000 acre mark is where guys either have some on hand if they start failing on them, or do a rebuild at that point where they'll take it into the shop, get it ready for the next season, and replace them all at one time. It's really up to your choice on what you want to do on that aspect. As we work our way up to the arms, so we do have different options as well on the arms. So we've got our heavy duty arm, we've got our standard arm, which gives you a couple different things. So the guys ask a lot, you know, why would I want that heavy duty option? Well, we have some organic type producers that turn these more into like a mini plow, for example. They're going to get a 22-inch blade configuration, and it has a little bit more torsion because of the actual tube that the torsion is around is bigger. The torsion devices are bigger, and the clamp and arm is also bigger. So gives it's a little bit stiffer machine to get it deeper in the ground. If you're running typical corn soybean rotation, probably not going to be that big of a benefit for you. I would stick with that standard arm design and probably a 20 or 22-inch preference, or what your preference is on the blade. As we work up to the clamps, as I talked about earlier, those torsion devices, we've got 4 different torsion devices that really hold that arm into place. They're a very highly engineered rubber that holds that into place, but we've got 4 all the way around that. That's what allows us to flex this machine, or those arms to move back to that 11.5 inches of travel before they'll actually rotate over center. These are almost a lifetime element, guys. We're seeing north of 100,000 acres out of them. Most guys aren't replacing them. They just really don't cause us very many problems. So as we walk around, one thing we did also change with our narrow transport design is our depth settings. As you can see now, the depth settings are on all 4 corners. Makes it very ergonomic as you're walking around the machine, making adjustments, and able to do those depth changes just by making a loop around the machine. We want to talk a little bit about the new 6-way deflector. So as you guys can see, a little bit different design. We haven't talked a lot about it, but really it's for more adjustability in the field. We've got our fore and aft adjustment here, so by loosening these bolts, you can slide this forward on the machine, rearward on the machine. We also have our standard in and out settings. So you've got your pin, you can pull down underneath here, you can pull it away from the machine or push it in closer. And typically, the wetter the soil, the closer we keep it. The drier the soil, the farther it goes, the more we move it out. As we step around to the other side here, you notice the geometry has changed a little bit. It's no longer a flat bent angle, it's more of a rounded design, and that's to follow more of the flow of the machine. So when I'm setting this in the field, I get my depth setting set correctly. I'll take my boot on the outside edge, I will drop it down to that point, so this tip here is on the top of my boot. I will pull it up on the front as far as we can inside of these 2 settings. I will have my depth set properly at that point. I can tighten that down, and then all we need to do at that point is move it in or out, depending on soil conditions. So what we're trying to do is catch as much soil from that front row, return it back to the rear row, because front blades all moving the soil this direction, rear blades moving the soil that direction. So as we're crossing that path, we want to be able to return that, so as you look down the row, we don't have a high spot or a low spot. It's just a consistent flow from one side to the other. So we've got our fore, aft, front, back. We've got our in and out, up and down, and then side to side. So that is the new 6-way deflector. We can update these. We've got a G1K kit. It's a G1K 777. Take a look at that if it's something that interests you to update on really either a 201, 261, or any of the older 302s, 362s, or 412s. So we've made our way around the back side of the machine, and you can see that these rollers are a little bit different than what we've offered in the past. They're still an Autoco, but they're an LSTXE style now. And really, we've made this change for the spring delivery of this year just because of the performance and some of the benefits that go along with that. So as you can tell, there's a little bit different on how the rubber is spaced, and then we've got this gray band in between. What this is the rubber is actually a little bit wider. It's not stacked up rubber on rubber anymore. We actually have a gap in between this, and what these are, they're a little more semi-pneumatic style tire. So as that tire rolls around, it's going to flatten out a little bit when it's in the soil, and then as it rolls through, it's actually going to spring back into place, shedding most of the soil that it would pick up. And then as it comes around with this UHMW ring, there's very little friction on this scraper. So as you'll notice, these scrapers are smaller. They get in there a whole lot deeper, and there's just really less rolling drag on that. So besides that self-cleaning feature of it, you'll notice that the gaps here are larger. What that does for us is allow more points for soil to flow through from the bottom of the roller. So as some guys, maybe in some sandier type soils or the finer soils, we've had problems with the machine as it's rolling, it starts pushing the soil instead of rolling over top of it. Well, now we've got more escape points, but we're not giving up that finish or that consolidation that we're used to with the roller. So we get the good without the bad. So these spacings allow us to have about a third less scraper arm. So most of you guys have seen in the fall when say we have a frost in the morning, and then about 10 o'clock when the sun comes out, it starts getting everything sticky, and you see these areas all full of cornstalk residue. Well, now it gives us a little more spacing, so we've gone from something very tight now to a little bit more space to allow that to flow through. So much better flow through, much better soil finish, much better consolidation, and we have more escape paths for the soil, so not much of that rolling wall effect that we had with that rubber on rubber style previously. Thanks for joining us today as we did our Mach walk around. Just to recap a little bit, we talked about that Category 4 hitch change to a Category 5 is that running change for spring of 23. So if you still need a Category 4, still available through parts, but moving on forward, that 302 will be up to a Category 5. We talked about the 6-way deflector, the changes that it makes, how to adjust that, and we also talked about the new style roller on the features and benefits that come along with that. So a lot of good things coming out of Kinze. We just wanted to touch base on them for you guys today. If you have any other questions, please see your local Kinze dealer or look us up at kinze.com.